Hi everyone. So I promised yesterday that I would be back with the second part of Mulugeta's update from Mekelle. Well, to be honest, I wasn't sure yesterday whether or not I will be back, but here I am anyway. So maybe you should thank me for that, for keeping my half-parted promise, and we're going to go through the second part of the dispatch from Mulugeta from Mekelle. I'm doing this because I think he is giving us a very useful update from Mekelle, because it's easy to get swept up in the propaganda from both the Tigray government and the Ethiopian government and members of the international community that everything has returned to normal in Tigray. That is the picture that they want to sell, and they have been invested a lot of resources to sell that story to us. So it's such a radical change, such a positive change that Mulugeta has tried his best to actually tell us what is life like in Mekelle, and although he focuses primarily on what life is like in Mekelle, I think we could use that to extrapolate what life must be in other parts of Tigray. Because I said yesterday, if a situation is bad in Mekelle, it can only be worse in other parts of Tigray. Because by every measure, Mekelle is better off than than other parts of Tigray. But before I take you through the second part of the update from Mulugeta, those of you who haven't watched the first part, please go to God's channel and have a listen to it. Or if you prefer reading to listening, please read the first part. It's on the same website. It's at Tufts University. Actually, there should be a link from the second part to the first one. And in the first one, Mulugeta focused on what was my notes? Oh yeah, he focused on what the condition of IDPs, internally displaced people, who have been hosted at schools in Mekelle. Very, very terrible condition that they have been living under. And he wrote about the condition of military veterans as well, disabled people, and how they are suffering from lack of treatment, from injuries that are completely treatable, because there simply is not enough supply, especially medical hardware like prosthetics and stuff like that. And he also wrote about the devastation that the lack of, or the suspension of humanitarian aid has been causing in Tigray. So that was part one of the update. And in the second part, so the main theme of his update, whether that is part one or part two, is that the siege that was imposed on Tigray during the war is lingering, is persisting in other forms. That is the main point that he's trying to drive home, that the siege exists even today, even when diplomats and political leaders and other personalities are trying to tell us that conditions have returned to normal. So the truth that Mulugeta is trying to drive home is that is a lie. That is a deliberate and concerted lie to totally mislead us, to gaslight us even. And in the second part, he focuses on three aspects as well. In the first section, he talks about reconstruction. In the second section, he writes about the terrible condition of the health service in Tigray. He focuses he narrows down his scope to the condition of either hospital, sort of referral hospital, the best hospital in Tigray by any account, and he paints a picture of a hospital that is really struggling. And that is the best hospital. That is the hospital that receives the most attention and support. But even that hospital is really struggling from lack of supply. And interestingly, in the third part, he writes about the political dynamic in Tigray, what people are thinking in Mekelle now, especially people who are university professors but who had joined the TDF and who are now disillusioned about the direction that the interim Tigray government is trying to take Tigray. So I'm going to briefly take you through each section. In the section on reconstruction, first, he reminds us of how complete the destruction of Tigray is by Eritrean and Ethiopian forces, because it was part of the strategy against Tigray to destroy Tigray, to deny Tigrayan farmers of their livelihood, of their implements, of their lifeline. That was one of the strategies that Eritrea and Ethiopia used, and everybody knows that, although everybody is trying to pretend that that wasn't the case. But anyway, Mulugeta starts by reminding us of how thorough and complete the destruction of Tigray has been, and he said that the Ethiopian government, or the Ethiopian regime, as I try to saying Ethiopian government is a complete red herring, because it's not a government. So the word, I don't know if you have paid attention, but the word that I think is more proper when it comes to Ethiopian, the Ethiopian system is a regime. So I should say Ethiopian regime, and if I say Ethiopian government, it's a case of me not thinking properly. So please understand that. So Mulugeta tells us that the Ethiopian regime doesn't have any remorse about what it has done in Tigray. It doesn't even acknowledge the destruction that it inflicted. It doesn't recognize that Tigray has been totally destroyed. And although, as part of the Pretoria Agreement, the Ethiopian regime promised that it would play a role in the reconstruction of Tigray, Mulugeta tells us that there has not been any attempt at reconstruction of Tigray. Actually, interestingly, the current budget for Tigray is, and this is very difficult to believe, is less than what it used to be pre-war. So the budget for Tigray for the 2022-2023 fiscal year is $309 million, and that is a much less figure than, I don't know if it's less figure or fewer figure. I'm getting my grammar mixed, but I don't mind. And so that is a far cry from any attempt at reconstruction. So forget reconstruction. Tigray is not even getting the normal budget that it would otherwise be entitled to. And Mulugeta details other aspects as well of how the Ethiopian regime is totally betraying and failing Tigray. Civil servants haven't been paid their salaries, and because, as you know, during the war, all salaries to Tigray were suspended. And although there has been an attempt, kind of a fake attempt at back pay, but I think that is only for 3 months, from January 2023, I believe. But the payment that civil servants in Tigray are otherwise entitled to, a payment for 2 years, hasn't happened. and that includes pensioners. So the elderly who are entirely dependent on government on their pension haven't been paid, and you could just imagine how grave the suffering in Tigray now must be. So that is the first section of Gebrehiwot's update, that there is no attempt on the part of the Ethiopian regime at rehabilitating or reconstructing Tigray, although that is a promise that the Ethiopian regime made as part of the agreement signed in Pretoria, that the Ethiopian regime would help in the reconstruction and rehabilitation of Tigray. And in fact, this is one of the sad ironies. The Ethiopian regime is receiving a lot of funding and loan and aid from Western donors in the name of reconstruction of Tigray. But that money that the Ethiopian regime is receiving on behalf of Tigray is not getting to Tigray. So that money is being redirected to completely different projects, maybe to some of the vanity projects that the supposed Prime Minister of Ethiopia is building for himself. You will have heard that one of the grand projects that he has embarked upon is a personal palace that is going to cost I think in the to the tune of $14 billion. Maybe, again, I could be mixing my figures, I'm not quite sure, but an exorbitant amount of money has been slated for that. And the money that Ethiopia is receiving in the name of reconstructing Tigray is being could be being funneled to that. Again, I don't have concrete evidence, but from how from our knowledge of how the Ethiopian regime operates, of how perfidious it is generally with its Western donors, that wouldn't surprise me if that was happening. So that is the first part, and the second part, Mulugeta writes about the condition of the health services in Tigray, and because he is relying on his personal observation, he's writing about a hospital that he himself visited. So it's not from second-hand information, it's not from reports, it's not from any other source, it's from stuff that he has witnessed himself, that he's writing. And he recounts his experience of visiting Eider Hospital. And say Eider Hospital, I think you will know, is a referral hospital, so it's kind of the most advanced hospital in Tigray. So referral hospital, for those of you who might not know, means that you know, if you go to other hospitals, and if your condition is beyond those hospitals could handle, they would refer you to Eider Hospital, because Eider Hospital have the equipment, the personnel, and the resources to handle complex medical procedures. So it's the most advanced hospital in Tigray. And in terms of its administrative structure, Mulugeta says that it's partly accountable to the Tigray government in its capacity as a hospital, and is partly accountable to the federal regime in its capacity as a teaching institution, I should say. But either way, that distinction doesn't matter now, because Eider Hospital is not getting enough funding, enough resources, enough supply, and the doctors and nurses, and generally the hospital is really struggling now. And he recounts his observations of visiting the he visited one of the department. I think it's a pediatrics department. So pediatrics department is the department that deals with children, and some children who have cancer, even not getting enough treatment or the required treatment, and completely preventable diseases sometimes. And the hospital is struggling to treat even children with completely treatable and preventable, or not preventable, but treatable disease. And there's one story that really sort of gives you it shows you the complexity of the problem in microcosm. And it's a story of father and his son. So let me read out that story. It's here. The experience is traumatic for the medical staff. The eyes of Sister Gennet were filled with tears when telling me of a child who came from northwestern Tigray. She tells the story as follows. So this is the story. His father brought him at the time we didn't have any drugs, but we asked him to leave us his number so that we can call him when the drug arrives. Then limited supply came and we called his father to bring his son. Unfortunately, the father was late to arrive at the hospital and we had only a dose for a day out of the required 5 days consecutive treatment. We gave him for 1 day and his father bought for the second day but couldn't continue as he didn't have any money remaining and had to take his son back to try holy water. So this is what is happening. This is what is happening, and it just shows you the degree of the problem. You know, a father from villages coming to the hospital with his son with nothing, just hope, and being told that there is no supply, and if he wanted medicine for his son, he would need to pay exorbitant amount of money, and that is only if and when there is supply. So that is what is happening at the referral hospital, and he recounts a lot of conversations that he has had with the doctors and with nurses, and the one overriding message is that they are really struggling. They're not getting enough medicine, they're not getting funding, they're not getting support. So despite the constant flood of information that we receive on a daily basis on social media by diplomats to go to Mekelle, that supply is getting to Mekelle, that support is getting to Mekelle, that medical equipment are being shipped to Mekelle, is a complete lie. There is nowhere near enough supply, even at the best and the most advanced hospital in Mekelle. Never mind in other hospitals in remote areas. So you could just imagine if this is the kind of stuff that is unfolding at the best hospital in Mekelle. It's beyond comprehension what might be happening at the other less known and obscure hospitals. So that is one area where you again, in terms of the main theme of the update, that is one area, one domain where you see clearly that the siege is active. And then the last section is about how people in Mekelle are observing the political situation not just in Tigray but in the country. So Mulugeta says that Tigray doesn't still have any representation at the federal government, although according to their constitution, Tigray was supposed to have representatives at the House of Federation and representatives at the House of Parliament. Of course, it's the House of Parliament that makes decisions on behalf of the country, and Tigray simply doesn't have any representative. But of course, is beholden to the decision that the House of Representatives. Again, let's be honest about one thing. It's not House of Representatives in the proper sense of the word. It's a rubber stamp parliament but there is no pretense on the part of the federal regime to even create a facade of representing Tigray. And Mulugeta also writes about the wrangling that went on to form the interim Tigray government. There was a lot of tension, and that was partly because there was no agreement as to how the interim government of Tigray was to be formed according to the Pretoria agreement. The only thing that the two parties, the Tigray government and the federal regime, agreed was that they would jointly create an interim government, but the modality or the procedure was never clear. And that gave Abiy the right to essentially toy with Tigray. And it took 3 months for them to agree. And I think, how it eventually transpired, most of you will know, so I'm not going to go into that. But here, just to make the point that it took 3 months to form the interim Tigray government. And Mulugeta says that the expectation that people in Mekelle had was that the Tigray government would focus on delivering stuff for the people, on getting stuff done, on being very urgent, on being very focused on the things that needed to be done, starting from making sure that foreign forces, from Eritrean forces to Amhara forces, making sure that they leave Tigray, to demanding that the federal regime plays a role in the reconstruction of Tigray, as I said in the first section, and a number of other things that were sort of in the to-do list, the mental to-do list that people in Tigray had. But that is not the perception and the impression that people today in Mekelle have. According to Mulugeta, people seem to have lost confidence in the Tigray government. People generally disenchanted and disenfranchised because they don't, disillusioned, I should say, because they don't have trust in the Tigray government. They don't believe that the Tigray government is doing its best. Actually, Mulugeta recounts one of the conversations that he has had with Gebrehiwot. Gebrehiwot is assistant professor at Mekelle University, and he was he had joined the TDF, and now at the time of writing, he was in Mekelle for a family visit, and Gebrehiwot is confused as to the direction of travel of Tigray, as to the direction that the interim Tigray government is trying to take Tigray. And he says that he is opposed to the way the interim government was formed. He said, so this is word for word I'm reading, the TPLF is partly responsible for what has happened in Tigray and shouldn't have been allowed to form a government under its leadership. And Mulugeta recounts conversation he had with other people as well from Mekelle University, and I think the message or the impression that you get from the stories that Mulugeta tells is that nobody in Tigray has any confidence in the Tigray government. Now, one thing that I must point out, Mulugeta doesn't state his own opinion, so you, from your surface reading, you wouldn't know what exactly Mulugeta himself thinks. But there's a palpable feeling that Mulugeta, I should say, also doesn't have any confidence in the Tigray government. He doesn't seem to have any idea as to what the Tigray government is trying to achieve. So these were the points that I wanted to take you through. Again, the main message is that Mekelle is under siege, and of course, if Mekelle is under siege, then the rest of Tigray is also under siege. If anything, under a more strict and serious siege, you could say, because the attention the focus of the international community is on Mekelle, or the visitors that we see to Mekelle. Nobody seems to care about the other parts of Tigray. And if the condition in Mekelle is dire, the condition in other parts of Tigray can only be even more dire. And I would like to thank Mulugeta for setting the record straight. It's easy to be misled and to be gaslit by all the non-ending stream of propaganda that we have been subjected to. So I think Mulugeta has done a wonderful job of countering all the lie from the government, from the diplomats, and from the other entities that are trying to tell us that things have changed in Tigray for the better. I can only encourage other people to follow in the footsteps of Mulugeta and write their observations, so that we will have a clearer picture of what is happening in Tigray. But that was that for today. Thank you for the listen, and bye-bye.